So the next part is our favorite part. That's where we're going to look at the macroinvertebrates in the creek. So if we take a look at that word macroinvertebrates, an invertebrate is something without a backbone. So we're mostly looking at aquatic insects. And macro means that we can see them without a microscope. A lot of them are tiny, but not so tiny that we need a microscope to see. These are also what we call benthic macroinvertebrates. So in order to catch them, we have to disturb the benthos, or the bottom of the creek. So we'll have to scuff up some rocks and rub a little bit to get them dislodged and washed into our net. So George is holding our net. So the idea is we want to make a little pocket like she's got there and lean it back a little bit so we get as much water flowing through it as possible. Upstream from the net, we'll have somebody scrubbing the rocks and kicking up the rocks to dislodge those benthic critters. They will wash into the net and we'll haul them out and see what we catch. So on to the creek. Okay, so our net is in position. We've got some rocks on the bottom to hold the bottom down. Georgia is ready to scrub some rocks. If you take a look around, we did pick a particular part of the creek called a riffle. So the riffle is where we got this little bit of white water. And as you can imagine, there's lots of really good dissolved oxygen in this water. Water's getting mixed with air from the atmosphere. So should be good habitat for critters. Let's find out. Okay, George, you can start scrubbing. So you want to make sure you scrub right in front of the net like she's doing. And you're going to scrub and kick up some rocks. So we're going to do this for about 20 or 30 seconds. You can come on back a little closer to the net as you're going. Shuffle those feet. There you go. Very good. Doing a little creek critter dance. And all that good stuff's washing into the net. And it doesn't look like anything right now, but when we pull it out, we should be able to see lots of dudes. Very good. We're back out on the table now, and we've got our net spread out. And there's a bunch of leaves in there, and you can see we've already pulled out little crayfish. The ice cube trays we've already filled with water from the creek. It's important to use creek water so that they feel like it's home. If we use water out of the tap, it may have chlorine in it, which would be poisonous to these guys. So we're just going to go through and pick out whatever we see moving, and you can see some of them are super small. And every once in a while, we're going to take a spray bottle and give them a nice spray to keep them wet. Because when we spray them, they'll wiggle, and that's how we find them. So we're going to take a few minutes and pick through, and we'll see what we catch. But we can see we already got quite a few things in the ice cube tray. Hopefully we'll be able to fill them up before the next few minutes are over. So we're still looking through. We've found quite a few, but a lot of the guys are really tiny. And we've got kind of a hot sun beating down, so it's important that we keep the net sprayed so we can see them wiggle. We don't want them to dry out and not be able to breathe. So I can show you what we found so far. So these critters are kind of like people in that some of them are slobs. They'll live anywhere in any old polluted creek. They don't really care. Some of them are clean freaks. Now I don't know too many middle schoolers who are clean freaks, but I guess there's some out there. And they really need clean water to live. And if it's not clean, they'll either leave or die. And then there are a bunch that are kind of fall somewhere in between. They're not really slobs, they're not really clean freaks. They can tolerate some pollution, but not a ton. So it's important to be able to identify which species you have and be able to count how many, because that's going to help us give a water quality number to the creek. So we'll take a look at these guys. I don't see very often. So they have two tails. So they're stoneflies. And they're pretty clean, much clean freaks. They really like clean water, so that's a good sign we're seeing those. There's a different species of stonefly right down there. He also has two tails. Looks a little bit different, but as a rule of thumb, if we think about things with two little tail appendages like that, we think of stoneflies. We have a number of mayflies that we've caught. So there's one example of a mayfly. Now it looks like he's got two tails. This is where it can be sometimes confusing, but really he should have three. So sometimes a mayfly, because they have these thin little tails, one of the tails may have been chopped off or eaten off or whatever. So sometimes just be careful and make sure that it doesn't have. It's supposed to have 3 and not 2. A different species of mayfly right there, 3 tails, very distinguishable there. Another tiny one over here, 3 tails. And actually, you know what? I'm seeing 2 of these guys that look kind of like that with 2 tails, so I'm thinking maybe that's a stonefly. But it's a species of stonefly that I'm not really familiar with, so may have to turn to the ID guide to take a look at that. We also have Helgramite. There's a Helgramite. Over here with the really kind of orangey looking head, that's a caddisfly. So caddisflies are also clean freaks. We found over here one little crayfish, tiny one. Matter of fact, he's not really, his exoskeleton's not hard enough to really hurt when he pinches you. So wish you were here to hold him, because that's a good one to practice on. Because there's no penalty when you mess up. But anyway, we'll keep looking through and we'll look and record our totals, because like I said, there's an activity you can do with this where you actually count and ID your critters, and that's going to tell you what the water quality of the creek is like. So one of the most important things is to record our data. So Georgia is counting how many of each critter that we've got and recording it on our sheet. So later we'll be able to go back and take a look at those numbers and figure out what they really mean. Like I said earlier, we can use the numbers and types of critters to figure out how clean or dirty the creek water is. So before we leave the creek, we want to make sure that we return the macroinvertebrates back to the creek as gently as possible. We'll try and put them back in the same spot, and they can find their rock home and hopefully survive the experience. In Botetourt County, this is one of our chief sources of both nutrients and sediment pollution. So you see cattle have access to the creek here, and when they do that, then they're going to probably leave a little something behind as they're sitting there cooling off and getting a drink. When looking at nutrients like phosphorus and nitrate, this is a source of that, and also sediment, because you can see as cattle go down to the creek, they're going to keep that bank chewed up and eroded, and sediment's going to be able to get into the creek. So what we do as a soil and water district is we help farmers design fencing systems and watering systems where they can fence the cattle out of the creek. That way the cattle are healthier and the creek stays cleaner, as does everything downstream.